Hello. Hello everyone. Am I audible? Yeah, okay. Okay, I'm getting some comments. Okay. Okay, cool. So, okay, that's great. That's great. So, yeah. So I think, yeah, we can start. Yeah, hello, hello. So I think, yeah, we guys can start. So as you guys know that this workshop is of Bootstrap, right? So, how many of you had, okay, so like the very vague question, how many of you had exactly know what a bootstrap is or has ever heard the term bootstrap in the first place? Let's see that. Mm-mm-mm. Okay, I don't know, no idea. Okay. Okay, no worries, no worries. So, okay, so let me give you guys a quick brief overview. Like, what are we gonna study in this next 2 hours? Like, what are we gonna do and what are we gonna learn, and what are some small prerequisite, right? Like, what are some very small prerequisite which you guys have to know in order to like get started with this workshop. Okay. So yeah, so like Bootstrap is a so like in a very layman's term, like Bootstrap is a CSS and some JavaScript, a little bit of framework which lets you guys style your website, right? So that's like a very basic definition which you can understand, right? So in order to like in this throughout this 2 hours of workshop, what are we gonna do? We are gonna firstly learn about what exactly is Bootstrap, how are we gonna get started with Bootstrap, like the installation process, and then we're gonna deep dive into like what all components does the Bootstrap offers, like what all things we can actually use Bootstrap in order to make our a very good looking website, right? So that was like a very vague or very like a very short kind of overview. So like talking about like a very small prerequisite, like which you guys should actually know is that you guys should have at least a small, a very basic fundamental knowledge about HTML, right? And also you guys should have a very basic understanding about what CSS is, right? So what CSS and what HTML is and what CSS actually does to HTML, right? That is the very small prerequisite which you guys should have in order to get started with Bootstrap. Okay. So all of you here know what HTML is and what CSS is. Like a very so these are like the very small building blocks which you guys should be aware about in order to get started with this workshop. Okay. So yeah, HTML, CSS. Just write yes or no. Okay. Okay. I just got one yes. Um. Right. Okay. Got it. So yeah, so if you guys have knowledge about HTML and you guys know what CSS is and what CSS does to HTML, then we are good to go, right? That's all we require. And now, if we know that, we are good to go and use Bootstrap in our website, right? Uh, yeah, few tags and all and basic level. Yeah, that's totally fine, right? That's totally fine. You should just know about the main skeleton and how you can style that skeleton using CSS, right? So yeah, so that was I think about okay, yeah. Sorry about like I like forgot to introduce myself a little bit there. So like before we get started, so I am Utkarsh Dubey. I am a mentor and instructor at AccioJob, and apart from that, I am from IIT Delhi, and I completed one internship at American Express, right? And I have about 2 years of web development experience, right? So yeah, I have been into web development for last 2 years, and I have been teaching at instruct and like working as an instructor and mentor at AccioJob for last 6 or 5 or 6 months, right? and I have taught around 100 to 150 students. So, yeah, so that was about like a very small introduction of me. So yeah, so if we have introduction away and we know what are we gonna do, let's dive a little bit more deep into what Bootstrap is, right? So tell me this, right? So you have, suppose you have a HTML page, right? You have HTML you written out, and then you write like you assign some class names to your tags, right? To your HTML tags, and then you can style it using your CSS, right? You write CSS for that particular class names, right? Does that ring a bell? Does that make sense? Like what I'm saying right now? Like how you actually apply CSS to your HTML? Um, yes, no, anything? Okay, okay, I'll take that as a yes. Okay. So what Bootstrap essentially does is that Bootstrap offers you like pre-written CSS, right? So Bootstrap, so if you go and open like any of the Bootstrap library and you download it, you will see that it has pre-written CSS, right? There is like pre-written CSS. There is about 13 to 15,000 lines of pre-written CSS, right? So there are pre-written classes, there are predefined classes in your Bootstrap, which you can directly use in your HTML. You don't have to worry about CSS. You don't have to write your own CSS, right? You can directly use classes which Bootstrap has to offer, and it has to offer tons of classes, right? It has around, as I said, like it's around the CSS file is around 13 to 15,000 lines of code, right? Just pure CSS code. So you can directly use that classes in your HTML place, like in your HTML page, and your HTML will look good, right? So that's the use of it, right? That's the use and why. Okay, so let me present a talk. Uh, yeah. So does this is this visible, right? So yeah, so this is something which I like pre-wrote a little bit so that we can keep track of this workshop and we can exactly know like what all we gonna like actually learn. Okay. So yeah, so like we have I think a little bit Bootstrap out of our way. Like we know now what like a Bootstrap is. It's you can say that it's a CSS library or it's like a CSS. It has like a CSS collection which you can directly use in your HTML page to style your HTML page, right? So that's Bootstrap for you. Now, the one very good question comes up, like why you should actually use Bootstrap, right? Like many students who are getting started with Bootstrap has this question in mind, like why do I actually need to use Bootstrap, right? So the major answer to that question is that first of all, Bootstrap is a very popular library out there. It's a very popular solution which people use, and it has been used in like tons of website, and it has a very big community, right? So you exactly know that it's something which is tested and everyone has thoroughly gone through it, and you will not find major errors, right? So it has been thoroughly tested by the community, and there is like a very big community around it, right? So if you have any doubt, if you have any like problems, if you get stuck anywhere, you will get the solution, right? So that's one thing, right? Why should use it? Why should you use Bootstrap? And second is like I'll like when we'll get started with the coding part, you will see that how easy it is to use Bootstrap, right? So the easiness of Bootstrap is also the reason why we should use it, right? And then the last and like it's the last, but it's like a very useful thing. It's that like CSS makes your website responsive, right? So what do I mean by responsive? Suppose you are writing just one code, right? You are writing one HTML code, and that HTML code will get rendered out throughout different devices, right? Suppose one person is using it on a big screen, one person is using it on a phone, right? So the website should look different according to what device you are using, right? So Bootstrap offers various classes and various things which you can use very easily to define a very responsive website, right? So that's the last and a very good reason to use Bootstrap. Cool. So now, and like everyone has a little bit of idea what Bootstrap is, and Bootstrap makes sense. If that is a little bit clear, then we can like get actually started with like installation part, and then we can dive into the coding part, and then you will actually see how things are working out, right? And then it will make more sense like why and what is Bootstrap and how it is working. Okay, cool. Okay, should we start with the coding thing? Should we go ahead and look at how things are actually working? Um, you guys can keep chatting, like keep writing. That will be very helpful. Okay. Okay, so let's try to make this session right as interactive as possible, right? Like try and write in chat section or in chat section that you are getting it, and let's move on, let's go, right? All those kind of things, so that it becomes a very easygoing and a very interactive session. Okay. And then like other than that, if you guys doesn't like something which I say doesn't make sense, you guys can point that out and ask me, right? So I'll pause a second and explain what I just said, okay? If something doesn't make sense. Cool. So yeah, so that's if that is out of the way, let's do this thing that okay. So wait, let me pull up. Okay, so now in order to get started with Bootstrap, what you guys have to do is let's just open at the official website of Bootstrap, right? So it's like get bootstrap.com if I am. Okay, I think I misspelled it. We just write Bootstrap on. Uh, yeah, so yeah, this is the official website of the Bootstrap. Yeah. So now, in order to get started with the Bootstrap, what you guys need. So what I'm gonna do, So there are multiple ways, right? There are multiple ways for installing Bootstrap. There is like you can install it using npm, right? I'm not sure if everyone here has used npm or not. So yeah, so you can install it using npm if you are using some advanced thing, right? And then the other way is like you can directly install it. You can directly install the main files of Bootstrap, right? That's one way. Now the other way, which is like the most used and a very common and a very easy way, is like like installing or using Bootstrap using the CDN, right? So what is CDN exactly? So CDN is, so this is the website, right? So this is a website where the Bootstrap files are actually hosted, right? So the Bootstrap files are actually hosted, and you can just directly use this link tag and add it in your HTML, and you will be good to go, right? You can add this link tag as a CSS to include the CSS part of Bootstrap, or you can include, and you can also include this script part to include the JavaScript part, right? So Bootstrap also offers a little bit of JavaScript, which can you can use to like put functionality in your code also, right? So it also provides a JavaScript thing. Cool. So let me do this thing. So let me open the VS Code, right? So I hope that you guys know what VS Code is, right, and have been using it. So yeah, so I'm going to use the VS Code only for that. So let's quickly make an index.html file, right? Let's quickly make an index.html file, because this is what I'm going to use for the demo thing, right? So we have like a very decent, so this is like the boiler code which you can get like from the autocomplete. This is the basic HTML, and let's make this live, right? So, okay, I think it was already live. So yeah, so here we have the document. Let's put this side by side so that you guys can see. Yeah, cool. So yeah, so we have this. So now you have a very plain HTML looking, right? So this is the basic HTML which you can possibly get. Now let's include, or now let's attach Bootstrap to this particular HTML. Okay, let's do that. So how we gonna do that? So let's do it using the CDN part, right? Let's do it using the CDN part. So what you have to simply do, you have to copy this link tag, right? Let's copy this link tag. And how do you attach CSS to your HTML, right? You attach it using this link tag, right? And you paste it in your head, like in the head tag, right? And then you can attach your any CSS file to your HTML, right? So that's the basic thing. So let's quickly come here and attach it. Yes, and we're just gonna paste it, right? So there you go. You have now your Bootstrap CSS is attached to your particular HTML page, right? So let me show you guys a very quick thing, like how does the CSS actually looks like of the Bootstrap, right? So let me directly open this link, right? Let me directly open this link in the browser, right? What this link is actually returning us. Let's see that, so that it will be a little bit more interesting thing. Yeah. So you see, like when I open this link, you get this, right? This random text which is written out here, right? So this is like a very big random text thing. So if I do this thing, let's copy this whole thing, right? Let's copy this whole thing and paste it in our VS Code, and I'm gonna quickly make a file. Let's make a file, and let's just say that bootstrap.css. Right? This is just me giving you a demo of how the Bootstrap code is actually written out. Okay, so that you guys can actually see that it's just pure CSS, which is pre-written, and you can use it. Right? So I'm just giving you a demo. So don't. This is not the part of the installation, right? This is just to show you guys how Bootstrap actually looks like. So I'm just gonna make this temporary file. Let's paste this all of the code, right, with the links return you. So I'm just gonna copy it. I'm gonna paste it here. Right. And now let's do this. Let's format this a little bit, right? So let's format this using the VS Code, right? So now this is formatted, right? So now you can see, like, if you have already used CSS at some point, you know that this is nothing. This is just a very basic CSS code only written, right? This is the CSS code only, right? Like padding, margin, like all those kind of a thing, right? So this is just, it is nothing. This is just a normal CSS code only, right? And as I was saying that it's like a very big CSS file, right? So you guys can see like it has like 13,000 lines of just pure CSS code. Cool. So this is what that link which we are including in our HTML thing returns us. Cool. So we have these lot of colors, we have a lot of classes, right, which we can directly use, right? This call class we'll use a lot. So these are just predefined classes which are there. Clear? So let's delete that because that was just for the demo thing. Yeah, cool. So now we have included the CSS part. Let's also include the JavaScript part because we are going to use it. We are going to use the uh, JavaScript part also. So as I think you guys must know, or if you have used or attached any script in your HTML thing, you attach the script part at like the very bottom of your body, right? Or you can attach it in your head, like a head tag also, but you have to use this declarative keyword. But I'm gonna just attach it at the bottom of my body, just simply like that. Okay. So now, if I just did that, now you guys can see that. So this HTML, so Bootstrap is now ready to go, right? Like Bootstrap is included in your HTML file, and now you can directly use Bootstrap, right? So now let me show you guys. Okay, so let me show you guys what Bootstrap actually does and how you can actually see the difference, right? So first, let me like comment these two files out, right? Which I just pasted. Let me comment these two files out, and let's just write a simple hello world thing, right? Let's just write a simple hello world thing and let's just save it. Yeah, so you guys can see, right, the hello world written here, and it doesn't have any font or anything. Like it, you guys can see that it's a, like a very normal font, and it has like a very basic padding and all this kind of thing. Now let me attach these files, right? Let me uncomment like these two things. So let me do that real quick. Yeah, so you can directly see, right, the font changed a little bit, right? And font changed a little bit. The padding in the margin got removed a little bit, right? So you guys can see that something happened there. So that is nothing. It's just a Bootstrap got attached to your HTML thing, and it has very default. It has a very default like font family and all those kind of things. So those got applied. Cool. Clear with the installation part? How we actually attach Bootstrap to a normal HTML file? Yeah. Mm. So yeah, so that was about the installation thing, about the Bootstrap thing. So that is how you install your Bootstrap. Okay. So if we are done with the installation of Bootstrap, now we are ready to go, right? Now we can use Bootstrap, right? So that was the thing. So we have like attached Bootstrap to our HTML thing. Now let's actually see what all things do we actually get out of Bootstrap. Okay. Explain box model. Okay. So like let me like start a little bit and then I'll explain what the box model is. It's nothing. It's just a designing tactics, like how do you actually design your website. So that's like a designing methodology. It's not really a thing which you do in a code. It's more like a practice or a design thing which you follow. Okay, so that's like a model thing, box model thing. So yeah, so now we are done with the installation part. Now let's just actually start, right? Now let's actually start diving deep into how what we get out of Bootstrap and how we can use it, right? And let's see it in practical, like how it's actually looking. Cool. So I'll write my code here, and you guys can like actually see the output here, right? So that will be good. Like that would be a good uh, thing to learn or like to see. Okay. So now, like starting off with the Bootstrap thing. So like now, like if you want, like Bootstrap offers a very decent documentation, right? So if I go to this read docs, Bootstrap offers all these things, right? So all these things which you see, right? The Bootstrap has to offer tons of components. It has to offer tons of classes. So what we are gonna do in this particular workshop, we are gonna cover the most basics of it, right? So that you can directly go ahead and use it in the website, right? And we are going to cover the most common components which you see in a normal website, right? Like tables, forms, modals, alerts, nav bars, all those kind of a things, right? So we are going to focus on the fundamental things, right? Like we're going to leave behind a little bit of advanced thing. We're just going to focus on the very basic and things which are very easy to like grasp and very easy to use in a project. Okay, cool. So, Atu, this is the documentation of the Bootstrap thing. It has everything documented, like it has everything written out here. You every classes is written out here, and how you can use it is also there. Clear? So now like the first thing which you should know about Bootstrap is how Bootstrap actually does the layout part, right? You have a web page, right? So this is your website, right? So this is your whole wide canvas thing. So now the first thing which you should know about Bootstrap is how it actually does the layout of your whole website, right? So in order to dive into Bootstrap, let's keep this three things in mind, right? So how Bootstrap does the layouting, it uses the grid system, right? So that's the most common thing, and it is why. So this grid system is why Bootstrap became so popular, right? And you will see why, because using this, like making your website is very easy, and it becomes very responsive also in that particular sense. So now let's start with that. Let's keep three things. Like let's first see the most outer thing is this part, this containers part, right? So this is the most fundamental. So yeah, as you can see, like the containers are the fundamental building blocks of Bootstrap, right? So this container is the first step, which from where we're gonna start the Bootstrap thing, right? So yeah, so if you want to do any layout in your like website, you have to use container, right? You have to use this container class, and let me show you guys in terms of the code thing. Okay, so let me put this thing aside. Yeah, so yeah, so all these things, right? All these words which you see right here, right? Like these container, grid, columns, or like table, images, everything. These are class names only, right? These are just class names. So let me make a container real quick. So div dot container, right? So let me do this. So if you guys don't know like what extensions I'm using of the VS Code, this autocomplete thing happened using extension which is known as Emmet, right? If you guys have been coding, you guys must already have it, and if you don't have it, you guys can go ahead and in your extension section in your VS Code and install that Emmet extension. And then the other extension which I'll very strongly recommend is this. Wait, let me show you guys is this HTML and you'll search this HTML and CSS thing, and the first thing which will come up is this, right? So this HTML and CSS, like IntelliSense for HTML and CSS. So I'll suggest that you install this, right? So what this extension does in your VS Code is that it will provide you with autocomplete functionality, right? It will show you what all classes does Bootstrap has to offer, right? So let me show you. Let me give you an example how it will. So if I write like container, right? Yeah. So you guys are getting like these are all the class names which I'm getting suggested by that extension, right? So it is like knowing that Bootstrap is attached to this particular file, and it is returning me all these class names, right? Which I can directly use in order to make my website look good, right? So I will strongly suggest that you guys install this extension, right? Just search HTML and CSS in your extension thing and install the first IntelliSense which appears. Okay. So yeah. So okay. So autocomplete I think was Emmet only. Wait, let me see. Yeah. So it's Emmet. You guys can go ahead and in your extension and just quickly search uh, Emmet thing. Okay, which one do I have? I don't really know. Wait, how can I see my installed extensions? Yeah, so let me see that. Mm, 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 auto complete. I don't know. It's not really showing up, but I think the name of that is something like Embed only. So you guys can Google it and look for that. It's not showing up really here. So yeah. So and I think if you have very basic intelligence also in your intel VS Code, which part? I am not sure. So I think the JavaScript or the HTML thing is also what does that? Mm, 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 mm. Okay, so I think let's not waste time in finding an extension, right? Let's just focus on here. So you guys can Google, right? Like the what's the most popular autocomplete extension for HTML or CSS thing. So you will get that on the Google only, right? So that's not an issue. So yeah, so we were discussing about the basic building block of Bootstrap, which is container, right? So container is something which so it will provide you a box like of a structure, right? Which will wrap everything which you code inside it, right? So let me show you this thing. So let me write this container thing, and how can okay? Let me in order to show you, let me make the background of that a little bit background color. Let's give aqua something. Cool, and now let me write something here. So yeah, so this this small rectangle box which you see right here, so that is what your container is, right? So your container is nothing. It just provides you a layout or a canvas on which you can start coding, right? Or you can start adding your elements. So that is container for you, right? And if you want to use the grid system of Bootstrap, you definitely have to use this container class. And in this container class only, you can further use the grid system which Bootstrap has to offer, right? So we'll be discussing about the grid system in a bit. So yeah, so that was your container introduction. So container, so Bootstrap has to offer two, three classes regarding container. So like if so you guys can see, right, like this blue box has some margin, right, from the like left side and the right side, right? It has some margins, like it's centered in the middle. So if I increase the size, right, so it will still be centered in the middle, but the margin will automatically change, right? The margin will automatically change if I change the screen size, right? So that happens automatically in this Bootstrap thing. So wait, yeah, where is the code thing? Yeah. So that is automatically happened using CSS. So it has some margin from left to right. So if you want to remove that margin from your container, there is another class which Bootstrap has to offer is like container, which is this float thing, right? So if you put this class, you guys will see that the margin from left and right got removed, right? So it provides you like end-to-end container thing, right? So that you don't have to just restrict like in the center of the screen, right? But the center of the screen looks better, but you have this option, right? And yeah, so that is one thing. Now okay, so now let's before moving ahead to the credit system, right, and Bootstrap, before moving ahead to that, let's first know a concept known as breakpoints, right? So how many of you have ever heard this term breakpoints in CSS, or have like used this term breakpoint or something like that? No. So not knowing is completely fine because we'll obviously discuss it. So yeah, you guys can write no also in the comment section. That's not an issue. No, BR is like break line kind of a stuff, right? So that's not the thing. That like breakpoints is not a like actual element. It's like a concept, right? So breakpoints. So what breakpoints really means is that your screen sizes, right? So suppose you have a very small phone, right? So its screen is obviously small. So the dimension of that screen is in terms of pixel, right? So if I think that should make sense, that the size of the screen is in terms of pixel tool. So what really happens is this. So there are certain breakpoints which like Bootstrap has defined, like predefined, which will help you distinguish between the screen sizes, right? So let me open this breakpoint thing in the docs. So yeah, so these are the breakpoint things which you will have. So extra small screen means that the dimension of that screen is less than this pixel, right? Less than 576 pixel, which Bootstrap has defined automatically. Then small screen is it is like something which is in between like 756 pixel to 576 pixel to 768 pixel. So that's like a very small screen. Then we have a medium screen, large screen, extra large screen, or extra large screen, right? So these are some screen options which like Bootstrap has provided you. So that is known as a breakpoint, right? So let me show you this. So the screen, I'm like increasing and decreasing the size of the screen, right? I'm increasing and decreasing the size of the screen. So something here is automatically adjusting, right? So you guys will see that this length is automatically being adjusted by Bootstrap, right? So yeah, so this is happening because it is identifying the breakpoints of your screen, right? It is identifying like what is the size of this canvas which you see out here, right? So that is known as like breakpoints. So a very large screen will have a different breakpoint, and yeah, so a medium screen will have a different breakpoint. So what I'm gonna do, so everything in the grid system, everything in the Bootstrap. So this is how you make your website responsive, right? You have to apply different styling for different screens, right? So if you are able to do that, you are able to code a website and you are able to write a single code which runs across all different platforms, and it looks good across all different screens, right? In your laptop, it also looks good, and at your phone also, it also looks good, right? So that is what writing a responsive website is. Cool. So now what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna write some very basic CSS, right? I'm gonna write a very basic CSS on my own, which will actually show you guys on the screen that what is exactly the size of the screen is right now, right? So whether the screen is in large mode or whether the screen is in small mode or medium mode, right? So let me write that CSS real quick, and then we can move ahead with our grid system, right? So breakpoint is a very crucial point to understand a grid system. So let me make this thing. Wait. So let me make this styles.css. Right. So what I'm gonna do here is this thing. So yeah. So in order to do that, let me add like a margin at top of the screen. Right. So let me first do that. Now to make room for that heading which I'm gonna put. So let me give like a margin of like 40, like the margin top of 40 in my screen. Yeah. So now, and let me put this thing like for, and let me first attach the CSS also in my HTML thing. So link, yeah, and we have like styles.css. Cool. So now your my CSS file is being attached to the HTML thing. So you will automatically see that something has been pushed down, right? You guys will be able to see that something happened here, and the content got shifted a little from the top, right? So this is that margin top thing. So I can like increase this to a big number also, and it will go like very down, right? So but let's keep it to 40 only, because yeah, I need that much space only. So now let me put content like on the screen. So okay, wait. Yeah, so let me put some content on the screen so that you guys can see this thing. So content, let's say that it's like access by default, right? Which is like extra small screen, right? Let me make the color of this as red, right? And let me make the font size of this as 2rem. Let me increase the font size a little bit. Then what I can do is like font weight as also bold, right? So this is like a very basic CSS which I'm writing. If you guys have ever worked on CSS, you guys will know that what these terms are. Cool. So this top right is like fixing it in the like top and right section of the screen. So yeah, I think that is pretty much of the thing which I wanted to write here. Yeah. So now let me add breakpoints in my screen, right? So now let me add breakpoints in my screen, so that this letter which you see right here, right? This XS means extra small screen, right? So in this bootstrap thing, you have this extra small. So this XS means extra small only. And now let me attach these text zones, so right, like small, medium, large, extra large, and extra large in my here, so that this changes dynamically when my screen size is changes, right? So when my screen size is changing, this changes dynamically. So if you have ever worked on responsive CSS, you know that there is one attribute in CSS which is known as this media query, right? So using media query, you are able to write responsive CSS, right? So I'll use that. And if this CSS is not making sense, then it's fine, right? Don't worry about it. Just focus on the functionality part, right? If the CSS is not making sense, really. So let me write the media query first. So min width, I can say that. Uh, okay, wait. Yeah, min width. If this is like 756 pixel, because that is what the breakpoint is, then just simply do that body 4, and let's just change the content only, right? Because that is what I really want to do. So let's do that like extra small. Right, so now let's just copy it and paste it again and again. So we need one for extra small. We need for, sorry, we have already small. We need a medium, right? And then we need one for large, then one for extra large, then one for extra large. So now we just have to change these minimum width criteria, so we can get that from the bootstrap thing. So it's like 576. Then we have this another breakpoint which is 768. So 768 pixel. And then if the breakpoint is 758, our screen becomes medium, right? And if it is greater than 992, our screen becomes simply large, right? And then if it is greater than 120, then our screen becomes extra large. And then if it is greater than 140 pixel, our screen becomes extra large. Cool. So yeah, so that is your, so now your CSS is open and it will change this content based on the screen size, right? Clear? So that is what some basic CSS which I wrote in order to like explain you guys like this breakpoint concept, right? And Bootstrap. So right now my screen is in which mode? It is in medium mode, right? This screen is of medium size according to Bootstrap. Clear? So now let me reduce the size. So now this screen is small size, right? According to Bootstrap, right? If I further decrease it, it is like of extra small size according to Bootstrap. Clear? And if I increase all the way here, it's like extra large, and you get the gist, right? Like it is changing dynamically, and it is like this size of the screen is known as large a size according to Bootstrap. Got it? So this is how your breakpoint really works. Clear? So now what you can do in Bootstrap, you can apply different styling on different breakpoints, right? So this is container. If I write here like this, right? Uh, container, and then I just write like container, and then I make the breakpoint, which is like MD. And then after MD, I just make it fluid, right? So this means that after my large thing, it will become fluid. And wait. So uh, 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 so container like is fluid, and then wait. Container XML. Yeah, yeah. So you guys can see that this thing is happening. So my so what I have written here, let's focus on that first. Like what I have actually written. Let me hide this so you guys can see the whole class name which I have written. So what I have written actually here is this container fluid thing, right? So as I discussed before, that container fluid is nothing. It's just it makes your this whole container go from end to end, right, of your screen. So that is the container fluid class, right? And then what happens is that I have given this breakpoint, right? I have given this breakpoint which is known as container Excel, right? So what is doing, like as soon as you enter the Excel size, right? As soon as you enter the Excel size, your this class name will apply, right? this thing will apply, right? This container thing will apply as soon as you hit this Excel breakpoint. Clear? So and we discussed that container class name is nothing. It provides some margin from both sides, right? So this, you can see this, like this thing, this container thing is changing dynamically, right? So if I am in the extra small, sorry, if I am in the small size or even in the medium size, my container is like container fluid, right? It's going from end to end. But if I come in a extra large screen, it is like extra large or above extra large, right? It is applying the container thing, right? It's not going end to end. So this is container XL. I can change it to container L also, right? So as soon as I hit large, this will, as soon as I go above, okay, wait. Uh, yeah, LG. It's not L. It's like LG. So as soon as I hit large breakpoint, this container is thing is gonna apply, right? So I'm in the medium and it's like container fluid, and as I hit like container, the breakpoint hits large, it is applying container class, right? So you have some margin. So this is what a responsive CSS really looks like, and using Bootstrap, it was very easy because I just have to write these two things, right? I don't have to worry about the media queries, and I don't have to write different CSS for these two different size of screens, right? So this happens automatically. So that was, I think, a little bit too brief of a little bit too big of an introduction of a breakpoint, but it's like a very important concept. Cool. So yeah, so if that makes sense, now we can dive into the grid system, right? So what the grid system is nothing. It's just like structure, like your whole screen can be divided into grids, right? So no. So don't get confused by this CSS, right? This CSS has nothing to do with the Bootstrap which we are learning, right? This CSS has nothing to do with the Bootstrap. This is what I have written for this thing, right? This thing which you see on the screen, right? Like MD or this large, this extra large. This is what I have written in order to show you guys what my size of my browser actually is, right? So this CSS has to do nothing with the Bootstrap. Now we don't have to actually enter any pixel value, right? It is predefined in Bootstrap, right? So if I'm writing like container LG, then it will know that LG means large, right? LG means large. Then we have SM means small. Then we have MT means medium, right? So it knows automatically that this CSS has to be applied for medium screens, right? This CSS has to be applied for large screens. So that happens automatically. It is predefined in Bootstrap. We don't have to enter any pixel values. Cool. So if we have that out of the way, let's look at this thing, right? Now let's focus on the grid thing, right? So grid is nothing. If suppose this is your screen, right? And your screen gets divided into some rows and some columns, right? Some virtual rows and some virtual columns. So that is known as a grid, right? So that is a grid. So now how can we make a grid using Bootstrap? So we have to make classes like a row class and a column class, right? So we have to interchange those classes and like in between them. So let me show you guys a quick example for that. So this is a row, right? And inside row we have columns. So yeah. So now you guys can't really see it. So wait, let me so there is some row and column here. So if I go into inspect element, I can, and if I go in my body thing, yeah. So in the container class, there is this row, and then this row has a column, right? But there is nothing inside that column, so you can't really see it. So let me do this thing. Let me make a normal thing. Let me make a class in which you guys can will be able to see my this thing, right? So let me make this like call it as blue, right? And what I'm gonna do is this simple, like background color is like blue only, right? And like the border, let's have like a border of like 1 pixel solid blue border. Yeah. And then I can have like a minimum height of, so this is just for demo purposes, right? This is just to show you that how this row and column really looks like on screen. So let me give that some minimum pixel. Wait, I forgot a semicolon there. Yeah, and then I can just have like a font size. I think font size doesn't really matter, but let's still put it there. Cool. So this is some blue class which I have made, and now let me make a div inside this column with this blue class only. right? So yeah, so now I have this blue thing, right? So you guys are able to see that there is this this is, so this blue, outer blue is nothing, it's just the container. So let me remove that. Let me remove the container part so that you guys are not able to see the container actually, but it is present, right? You saw some blue there, so that your container is actually present on the screen, but I just remove it so that you guys can't really see it. So now, so we have a row, right? So we have a row and we have a column, right? And inside this column, we have this tag, which is this blue, which is this blue box, which you see, right? And it is present inside this row and inside this column, right? So now, the main thing which you should know about Bootstrap is this, that every row in Bootstrap is divided into 12 columns, right? Let's just keep that in mind. Like every row in Bootstrap is divided into 12 columns, right? That's a magic number which Bootstrap uses. Cool. So you have to keep that in mind, right? So what? Suppose now let's do this. Let's copy paste these rows, right? Let's have multiple columns, right? Let's have multiple columns in what one particular row. So that I'll just paste this. I have pasted 4 columns, right? So you guys will see that now I have 4 boxes, right? So these boxes are nothing. These boxes are columns, right? These boxes are columns in this one particular row. To getting this row thing and this column thing, like you have a row, and in this, what I have done, I have 4 columns, right? So I had to do nothing, right? I had to not mention the size. I didn't have to mention anything, right? Everything happened automatically, right? They got aligned perfectly, like equal size, and they have equal space in between them. That happened automatically, right? And it looks like they have been aligned perfectly, right? So that is what Bootstrap offers you, right? So this is your grid steps system which Bootstrap offers you. So now, if as I said, right, like every row in Bootstrap is divided into 12 columns, right? So what this is there is happening. So now, right now, I just have 4 columns, right? I just now have 4 columns. So what is really happening? Each column, each this box is taking 3 columns, right? Each this box is taking 3 columns here, okay? So like 3 columns, this box is taking 3 columns, this box is taking, and 3 and 3, right? So what Bootstrap divides them equally, right? If you haven't specified by your own, Bootstrap divides that row and gives them equal columns to the columns which you have done, right? So that they have equal sizes. Cool. So now let's see more, right? How do we actually have 12 columns, right? Let's see that. So what you can do, you can specify this call class, right? This call class which is there. So this is the column class. You can specify it like very clearly that how many columns you want to use, right? How many columns out of those 12 columns which are present, how many do you want this column to take, right? So you can specify it using this, right? So you guys can see, right, this numbers, right? So this number is from all the way to 1 till maximum of 12, right? So what I can do, I can say that let this column take up 8 columns, right? Out of those 12 columns, let this column take 8 columns, right? So what is happening here? So this column is taking 8 columns, right, of that particular row, and then the remaining 4 columns are getting equally distributed among these 3 columns, right? So still everything looks very centered and everything. So that is what is happening automatically, right? So you just have specified that this div should take call 8, means this div should take 8 columns out of those 12 columns, right? So now if I can just say that, like now this is taking 8. Now let's just make this column take 2, right? Let's just make this column take 2 columns, right? So you guys can see the size automatically change, right? Now this is taking 8, this is taking 2, and these are what are remaining, right? 2 and like 8 and 2 are gone, so only 2 columns are remaining. So these things are taking one columns each, right? So that happens automatically. So whatever is remaining is divided equally among the calls which don't have any specific values. Getting this in mind, like, so if I have to, so let's remove these 2 columns, right? Let's just remove these columns. Let's just deal with these 2 columns only. So now what I have here, like I have specified these 8 columns, right? And I have specified this as 2 columns, right? So my 2 columns are remaining here, right? You guys can't really see it, but they are still present there. So let me make the background of container something. So okay, not the background of container. Let me make the background of row as something, right? Give it some color so that you guys can actually see that there are some remaining space. Yeah. So this is my back. So yeah, this whole aqua color is my row, right? And this is the column space, right? So this is taking 8 columns, right? Because I have written call 8, and this is taken like call 2, right? Because this I have written call 2. This is taking like 2 columns. So now the remaining 2 columns are left behind, right? They are left as an empty space. because no one is there to use that thing, right? So what if I say that this is 8 and let this thing use the 4 columns, right? So now this will take up the rest of the space, right? So I have distributed them among, like, this thing is like 8 to 4 ratio, right? So that's like 2 to 1 ratio. So this is of twice the size of this. If I want to make them equal sizes, I can divide them into like six and six part, right? So now these will be equal. Cool. So those are how, like, total 12 columns are there. Just keep that in mind, and how you can specify the total number of columns to each column, right? So that is how your grid structure flows a little bit. Okay. Now moving on to the next thing is this, like if you have, so suppose this is the case, right? So suppose you give this as, so suppose you give this value, let's give it a value of 8, right? Let this column have a value of 8, right? Call 8 so that it is occupying 8 columns, and let this remain as 6 only, right? So, but this thing will be a issue because this will 8 and 6 is 14, right? There are not 14 columns in Bootstrap. So what Bootstrap will do, Bootstrap will wrap this around in the next row, right? Bootstrap will wrap this around in the next row, and you guys will see that it happens automatically, right? So let me give it 8, right? Let me give this 8. So yeah, this is taking 8 space, and this thing has to take 6 space, but there was no 6 space remaining there, right? So it got pushed to the next row automatically, right? So that is what the wrapping happens in Bootstrap, right? So yeah, so that was the most basic example of like your row and column thing, right? So yeah, so now so that is what you have to keep in mind while laying out the structure in terms of column and rows. Clear? So now let's move on, and now let's see how I can make this code responsive based on my column thing, right? Let's make this code responsive. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna do this. So I can make this responsive in this sense, right? I can write this call LG, and I can just say that 6, right? So right now, if I go to the large screen, right? If I go to the large screen, you guys will see that this CSS is being applied, right? If I am at the large screen, this CSS is being applied. That means that if I am at the large screen or greater than large screen, right? What is happening? That this call 6 CSS is being applied, right? So this div is now taking up 6 columns, and this is taking 6 columns. So now they are in the same row, and they are occupying equal spaces, right? But if I reduce the size of the screen, let's make it go into medium. So again, this CSS is being applied that take up the 8 columns and take up the 6 columns. So they are moving in the next row, right? So this is happening automatically. I didn't enter any pixel value or anything. So anything above large, which is extra large, is also above large. So now this is taking like call 6 and call 6, right? So they are like taking equal spaces. Cool. So yeah, so that happens automatically. So now if I just want to do that, if the size is smaller than my medium, like large screen, what I want to do, these two rows, right? If I want to do this in my HTML, that if my screen is big enough, right? If my screen is big enough, like make these two rows, two columns take up the equal size. But if my screen is smaller, right? If it is smaller than my large screen, what should happen? That this column should take up the whole row, and this column should also take up the whole row, right? That is what the logic which I want to write, right? So what I'll do simply here, like instead of 8, like call 8, what I can just simply do is like I can give it the whole like 12 length, right? So if I like say right call 12, then it will apply the whole page, right? It's like the whole row, and then I also give this as call. Okay, okay, so call 12 for small rows, and then call large, like if the screen is larger than large screen, or then just say it like 6, right? So now for large screen, it is like equal, but if I remove, like decrease the size of the screen, you guys will see that they will get stacked like upon each other, right? Let me decrease the size. So yeah, so now it's the medium size. Now they are on top of each other, right? Like those two columns were here, like 6 6. Now I'm decreasing the size, so it's like a medium screen, so it is decreasing to getting overlaid on top of each other, right? Because this CSS is being applied. So similar to this, I can break it on multiple sizes, right? I can break it on medium screen also. So on medium screen also, they will apply 6 6, right? And then if I go below medium, they will get stacked on top of each other, right? So that is the very usefulness of Bootstrap, right? That is the useful note of Bootstrap. You can write interactive or you can write responsive website. That looks very good, right? So yeah, so that is a very good thing of Bootstrap. Clear? Clear with the row thing and that thing in mind, like the row and column structure. If that is clear, then we can move on to like a more like next topic. So what's the next topic is? Wait. So we have container, we have row, and we have column, we have breakpoints, right? So we have covered all these things. That means that our layout part is clear, right? So now we can make a layout on our web page, and then we can introduce other things, right? So now the next thing which we have to move on are these important things which you like see on the website, right? More often, like these layouts on the website, you don't really care about, right? Because these things are not visible, right? I have made this visible for the demo purposes, but they are not really visible on a website. But it is very important to know the fundamentals in order to start like making a very good looking website. So knowing the layout is very important. Cool. Clear. So now let's move on to the next part, which is images thing. Can you share that PDF? So it's not really a PDF. So I have just written it on my notepad. Right, I have written these topics in my notepad. If you want this, you can just take a screenshot of it if you really want it. But yeah, other than that, let's do this. Let's now dive into the next part, which is this. Now let's dive into the images part, right? Let's first focus on the images and then we'll move on to the table part. Clear? So now, what images? So images, why images? Because images is like a very crucial part of any of the website, right? Any website nowadays will definitely have images, right? So now let's talk about some two, three tags which, like some two, three classes which Bootstrap offers to make your image look good, right? So let's do that. So what I'm gonna do that for that, let's do this. Let's remove the column and row thing. Okay, okay. I think one more thing which I forgot to show you guys is like, okay. So let me remove this CSS. So let me stack them on top of each other, right? So you have two columns, right? But they don't really have any space between them, right? If you want to give space between columns in your row, there is a property which, so in like commonly that property is known as gap in CSS, but Bootstrap have given it a different name, which is gutter, right? So how you can do that in your row class? What you will do is this. So G stands for that only. So I want a gap in my y direction, right? So that is my y axis, and this is my x axis, right? So that should be, I think, pretty clear. So if I want to give gap in my y direction, I'll just simply write that gy, and then some value. It goes up to like 5 value. That's the only limit which it offers. So let's write the gy 3, right? So now you will see that there is a gap between my rows, right? So this happened between like gy. So this gap property in Bootstrap is known as gutter, right? And if you are going through the documentation, this is the property which we are using right now, right? This gutter property. Cool. So this is just for adding, like making, giving space in terms of column, right? Clear? So yeah. So yeah, so that, so similarly, like in your y direction, you can also have it like in terms of x direction, and then you can have it a general gap also. So that is also present. So, but there are like three options like G, Gx, and Gy, right? For giving spaces in Y or X direction. Yeah. So yeah, so that was all about rows and columns. Now let's move on to the image part. So let me remove that. Let me remove all that. So now let's, okay, so before moving on to the image part, let's get an image, right? So let me write this like pick some. So this will give me like random images, right? So this website provides you random images for development purposes, which you can use. So yeah, so I let's get this link, and what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna have a normal image tag, right? I'm gonna have a normal image tag, right? And I'm gonna just paste the link here. So you guys should see the image now. Yeah, cool. So yeah, so the image is here, and yeah, and then like these are the attributes, like how many length of image do you I really want. So if I want like a 200 by 300 image, or like let's say I want a bigger image like 700 by 300, So I can just change the value and I will give it like a 700 by 300 image, right? So yeah, so this is the website which we are gonna use for demo purposes. So now let's see this, right? Let's see the image property which we have on offer. So let's do this thing. Let's put a div, right? Let's put a div and let's put this image inside a div, right? Let's do that. So I'm gonna have a normal div and let's put this image inside a div. So you'll see in a bit like why I'm doing this. So now let's do this one thing that let's have a class to this div and let's add some border, right? So I am using some class names of Bootstrap which I'll explain later on, so don't worry about it. So I'm adding some border in this. So this is I'm using Bootstrap only. So you guys see that this line is going through this div, right? So yeah. Okay, and then I can put all these things in a container so that everything comes in center, so that it will look a little bit decent. That is why container is a building block, right? So everything you should put in a container, otherwise it will look out of style or something like that. Yeah. So now everything is in center, right? So now you guys can see that this div has this border, right? So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna add a little bit of padding. So you don't worry about these terms. I'll explain it later on. These are some utilities which Bootstrap offer, but I'm using it right now for the demo purposes of the image. Okay. So yeah, so this is that, and now I can also increase the border a bit. So like let's say like border 5. So now I have a very thick and a decent border, right? So which is just clearly visible. So now I'll do one more thing. I'll make the width as let's say 50% only, right? Yeah. So now let's make the image big, right? Now let's make the image big. Let's make it 700. Yeah. So now this is what I wanted to give you a demo, right? So now this is what you have, right? This is what you have as an image, right? So you guys can clearly see this is the div, right? This is the div. Suppose you want to have a picture frame only on your website, right? Suppose you want that in your HTML. So you have that this border thing, this div as a picture frame, right? But your picture is a little bit big, right? As you guys can see that it is going out of bound, right? It is overflowing the div which I have here, right? It is clearly overflowing and it's not looking good, right? So what Bootstrap offers you one class which will make this image very responsive, right? So how this will become responsive? So let me add a class name to this image tag, right? Let me add a class name to this image tag. Class, sorry, class to this image tag, and so now that class which Bootstrap offers you to make this as big as this image dot thing. What just happened here? Wait, okay. Yeah, what was that? I don't know. Class, then image fluid class. Let's add this image fluid class. So yeah, so now this image fluid class that did what? It made this image responsive, right? Like whatever the value of whatever maybe the height and width of this image, what this image fluid class is doing, this image fluid class is doing, it is making this image responsive, right? It is actually occupying the space which the div has to offer. Okay. So now let me do this. Let me make the height uh, of div as a little bit big. Let me write like 400 pixels. Yeah, and let me increase the size of this also. Let's say 500. Yeah. So this image will automatically assume the size of this div, so it will not overflow in any sense, right? So I can even write the height as auto, so it will like wrap around the image only, right? So yeah, so I can have a bigger image also, and this thing will be still present inside the div only, right? It will not overflow at any cost. Clear? So like I can get a very big image also. Let's get like a 1200 pixel image also. Then also it will stay in the box only, right? So that is the responsive image classes which Bootstrap has to offer. Cool. Yeah. So that is about the image thing which I wanted to show a quick small demo of image. So other than that, so if you want to read about more classes about images, you can obviously like go to the Bootstrap, but we're gonna like skip ahead a little bit, like fastly because we have to cover a lot more components. Okay. So about the certificate, so you guys will get the certificate. So you our link will be floated in the cut like the chat section around like let's say like the last 30 or 20 minutes of the session, and then you guys will have to fill that form to get that certificate. Yeah, so now let's go to the table thing, right? Now let's go to the table part. So what I'm gonna do, I'm gonna quickly write some table content which for you guys. So let me write some table content for you guys. T head, then th in the table heading. Let's have a row in which we have some td, let's say test, and then we just copy it again and again, so that we have at least three things, right? So this is your table head. Let's have a table body also. So I'm writing a very boilerplate of your table. Cool. And then we have a tr here, and then let's just copy these things only. Yep. Yeah, and let's just add some rules here. Cool. So this is the very basic table which you have here on. I have written here like using like normal HTML, right? So uh, so procedure to get the certificate. So in order to get the certificate, as I said, like a Google form link will be floated. So you just have to fill that Google form, right, in order to get that certificate. So yeah, so this table which you see right here is a very basic table, right? It's not even looking like a table as of right now, right? You just have it's just looking that there are some random text which is just printed there, right? So let's see how Bootstrap will make it look good, right? And I'll just have to write a very small thing, and then you will see that how a table will change very drastically, right? So let me write this class, right? Let me like so like you so I think till now you guys have got this very clear that using writing class we are able to access the bootstrap thing, right? So I think that should be very clear till now. So now let me write this class. There is this table class which bootstrap offers, so let me write this table. So now you will see that this automatically has done something and it looks good, right? Something some border, some padding, some border thing has been applied by bootstrap, and now that plain looking text has gone to look like a table, right? It is really now looking like a table. So that is what like bootstrap really does. Cool. So yeah, so this is your table class. Now table class has a lot more uh, attributes. So there is now let's quickly go over all the classes which Bootstrap has to offer regarding tables. Okay, so we have table. Then suppose that you see like in some documents you have tables like which have alternate colors in the alternate row. So you can do that using table striped, right? If you write table stripes, your alternate rows will have alternate colors, right? Like it will have gray and it will have that kind of a color. Clear? So that is your table striped property. So if and it also have like offers a table hover property. Clear? So table hover is something. So if whatever row you hover will get highlighted, right? This is happening automatically. You just have to use these small class names and everything will be handled automatically, right? So then now one more property which you can do. So this is your table row, right? So I can add a class name here also, and I can just say like table active, right? Table active. So this row will become active, right? This is my first row. So I can put this class name, suppose let's say in my third row. Clear? So now my third row will become active, right? And the other row is getting highlighted on the hover thing, right? But this row is active throughout. So this is your like the table active property, right? So then apart from table head, like table hover, we have, so if you want to put borders to this table, right? So you can have like a table bordered property, and then this table will be bordered, right? So yeah, and then we have, suppose you don't want any borders at all, right? Don't want any borders, you can just write table borderless. Now everything will go, right? Every lines will go, right? So that is like table borderless. So yeah, I think that is all the classes which I can show you guys of table in Bootstrap. Then I think there is one more thing about caption, I think in table. So caption tag, yeah, caption tag. So demo table, I'll just write. So yeah, so you will see this. So this is caption. By caption, what do I mean is like some information about the table, right? So that is the caption thing. So table bordered. So let's give it table bordered. So you will be able to see the. So this is the caption for the table, right? What the table is actually doing. Cool. And then you can make the caption go at top also by writing this in the table tag, which is this caption top, right? So this thing will move at the top, right? So this thing is at the top and it is telling about what the table is about. Cool. So I think that is, I think, pretty much all the table attributes which I have in my mind. Uh, I think other than that, there is okay. So there is one more very important tag, which is known as table responsive tag. Cool. I think it's table, yeah, table responsive only. So what that tag really does is, suppose you have a very big table, right, on your page. So if you have a very big table, it will give like a, you'll make your table scrollable, right? So suppose if I have I have a lot of this thing. Let's put that, right. So you have this thing, right, and if your size is very small, it will like overflow and all those kind of a thing will happen, right? So now if in order to make this thing a little bit responsive, what you can do, you can have a div, right? You can have a div and you can have a class name of table responsive, right? And then inside that div, you can paste the whole table. So let me copy the whole table and paste it here. Yeah. So now if you have a big table, it will add that scrollable thing. Yeah. So you guys will see that this, if this screen is very small, this was making it like a scrollable thing, right? So the scrollable thing is coming because of this table responsive only. And so if this is very useful for very big tables. Clear? So if the table is very big, you make sure to wrap the table around this table responsive div. Cool. I think that is pretty much about the table part. Now let's move ahead to the next component. So we have discussed about this thing. So now let's move on to the form part, right? Let's move on to the form part and let's discuss what all classes to like Bootstrap offer for the form class, right? In order to make your form look good, what all things you can have, right? So let me remove this table thing. We are done with the table part. Yeah. So this, so now, why are we discussing about different components so that you guys can get an idea, right? What all different things this Bootstrap really has to offer. Clear? So that is why we are discussing all these different components, right? We are discussing about all these things so that you have at least a little bit about idea, like what all things you can do using Bootstrap, right? And then after you get a hang of it, it just Googling or it just going to this Bootstrap website and just searching here, right? Searching whatever you want to read about, right? Let's say you want to read about how to give margin in Bootstrap. So you just search margin and you read the margin examples. So once you just quickly go to the margin example, you will be able to realize how to give margins, right? Like MX Auto, and then yeah, all these like row gaps, you apply this class name, right? So if you get start getting a hang of it, like making a website look good is very easy using Bootstrap, right? So that is why I'm showing you guys some examples of the components so that you guys know what all exists in Bootstrap. Okay. So yeah, so we were going to talk about forms. There are multiple things which you can do in order to make a form look good using Bootstrap. So let's first have a very basic form, right? Let's have a very basic form. So in a form, let's have first a label, right? And then after a label, right, I can have like an email, and then I can have an input. Clear? No, no, you have to wrap it around a different table only. You can't use it in the same table class only. Otherwise, so you need to have some kind of a container in order to make that thing responsive, right? So in order to get that container, you have to get something, some div, right? That will make it responsive. So now let's get an input tag. So I'm just gonna close it here only. So type, let's have it text simple, right? And yeah, we can have like a placeholder also, and like enter email. Yeah, cool. So that is, and now let's have a button, right? Like let's have a submit button. Cool. So yeah, so this is our basic form, right? This is our basic looking form. Now let's quickly make this form look different or look good using Bootstrap, right? By just applying a little bit of classes, we can make this form look good, right? So now, what all classes do we have for forms? So if you go to the like the documentation thing, you guys will go in the form thing, and if you go to the overview part, you guys will directly see that there are some classes which is known as this form label, right, which is for the label class. And then we have like a form control for the input thing, right? So let's just use that only. So let's just use like, okay, let's open the form thing so that you guys can see the difference. So class here, and let's just add like form label, right, for the label thing. And then for the control thing, let's add a class for class, and then just say like form control, right? So as soon as I did that, right, as soon as I like wrote these two classes, which is this form label class and form control class, you saw that this whole thing became thing, and there are some effect which is being applied, right? Like this hover effect, and like it became the whole screen, right? And the email go like went up all that bit. So that is something which just happened with this only, right? Like just applying this form control and form this thing, right? So now apart from that, you can have like different what different type of inputs you can check from that. So now let's get a input which is like a color input, right? So we know that HTML offers a color picker, right? So this is a normal color picker which HTML has to offer. So what we can do, we can make this color picker look a little bit good. And how we can do that is this, right? So we have form control. I think form control color is the class. Yeah, so form control color is the class. Yeah, and it's instead of going taking up the whole space, it now went to like a color picker thing, right? And it looks decent. So form, I think, and I can add like form control also to put it in the next line. Okay, I think this does. Okay, wait. Yeah, yeah. So yeah, so now this is like a decent looking. So it is not applying the whole space. And similarly, we can do it for color, and then we also have a range type, right? We can do it for range also. And the form control color. So instead of form control color, I think there is one class which is known as form range. Yeah, so form range, and it will, yeah. So this becomes a little bit better of our input, right? If you want to take a range into input thing, right? So this is the input thing which happens. Cool. So I think apart from that, yeah, I think that is, I think, pretty much it. Or I think one more thing is there. I think form check, you can also have it. So if your input type is like a checkbox, right? So then you can have like a form check thing. Yeah. Yeah, form check thing is being applied there. And then I think if you have to put this label below your input thing in this thing to work very nicely. Okay. I think that's form. I think. Okay, wait. Div dot form check, and let me put that inside this div. Yeah. So let's put this like form check input, and this like form check label. Yeah. So now they look much aligned, right? They look much better, and those kind of a thing. Yeah. So now they have like a better aligning. Cool. So yeah. So that is about the input thing. Yeah. So you can have password also and all this kind of input. So yeah, and then they also take this thing into consideration. So you have this also, right? So in your input thing, you have this property also, right? Like this disabled property. So this bootstrap takes this also into consideration. So this will get disabled, right? You can't now click it, right? So this disabled thing is also applied to the styling part, right? Just like that. So you just, if you remove disable, this will come back to the color thing, right? So bootstrap takes these also into consideration, the disabled thing. Clear? And now I think the next thing about the form, which is very important to know, is this floating labels, right? So in order to make a very professional looking form, let's make a very professional looking form, right? Let's do that. So let's remove that thing which we have, and now let's have a div, right? which I'll have like a form label, not like form label. Let's have like a label only. Cool. And then in this, let's have a class. And in this class, I'll just say like form label. Form label. Okay, let's go here only, right? And let's write like email here. Cool. And now let's have input. Okay, cool. We have input thing. And then this we have like normal type, sorry, type equals to email, and then placeholder as simply enter your email. Cool. And then now we can just add a class also here, which is this. This is what I'm like doing again, like form import, sorry, form control, I think, yeah. Cool, yeah. So now this is back again. So now what I want to make a floating label, right? So what do I mean by floating label? So in like if you have seen it somewhere on any website, so what happens like this email thing is here, like, and then when I click on it, this email thing goes at the top, right? And it looks like a very good input kind of a thing. So how I can do that is like have a div, right? Uh, yeah, I think I can have like a div and have a class name of form floating. Yeah, and then I can put that both these two things into this form floating thing. Yeah, so now, okay, I think, yeah, so this, so one thing which you have to keep in mind that this label should be below this input thing, right? In order to make this form thing work. So yeah, yeah. So now you guys can see like this, that input which we had earlier is looking now much better, right? So now this email thing, and when we click on it, it goes up, and now you can type whatever you want, right? Yeah. So that is done using this form floating class which you have in Bootstrap. Cool. Yeah, so that was about the floating input. So if you go to the documentation part, this is the floating label part where you can read more about it if you want to. Okay. So now I think that is pretty much it. I think then also now, other than that, we have this like is valid and is input option also present. So I can make this thing also appear. So I can write like is valid. Uh, wait, wait, this is valid, right? Let me write it here. Yeah. So I think is valid is not getting into consideration. Where this? Wait. Yeah. So if I put it in the input tag like this is valid. Is valid means like this input is a valid input. So you guys will see that it is getting highlighted with a green color and you have a tick mark, right? And similarly, we can have like is invalid option also, right? So these are small validation options which Bootstrap also offers you, right? So that you can do like form validation in your using Bootstrap, right? So yeah, so this is your validation thing, right? So you can add these classes based on the validation part, and then it also takes consider into this these things, right? Like you can also have make this input as required, right? So that will also get considered into Bootstrap. I think yeah, so that is I think pretty much we have seen about the form thing. Clear. So apart from form, now let's so now apart now we are done with all the inputs and styling and all those kind of a thing, right? So now the next thing which we need to know about Bootstrap is that it offers a bunch of different components also, right? It offers a different bunch of components which you can directly use in your website in order to make it look good, right? And the most very common component, so this is so the very important component to know about is buttons, right? Because you use buttons very often in your websites, right? So in order to know what all classes do we have in terms of button is very important. Okay, so let me remove this form, right? Let me remove this form and let's discuss about what we can have in terms of button, right? So let me go ahead here and let me have a button first. Clear. So let me have a button and let's write like okay, let's write button. Okay, not okay, button only here. Cool. So yeah, so this is a very normal looking button, right? Which your basic HTML has to offer. So in order to make this button look very good, you just have to do this like class, and the button class which Bootstrap has to offer is BTN. Clear? So as soon as you write it, you get this, and like it also offers like a very color option also, like BTN primary. I think is blue color. Yeah, PTN primary. Yeah. So now you have this button, right, which has this hover effect also, and the color is like this only, right? So this is your BTN and BTN primary thing. Clear? So now Bootstrap offers I think 7 or 8 major colors, right? So one is like primary, then other is like secondary color, which is like a grayish color. Then you have a success color, maybe. Yeah, you have success color, which is like a green color sort of a thing, right? And then one is like danger for red color, kind of a warning kind of a situation. Cool. So these are all the colors which Bootstrap has to offer, and you can put it in your button thing. Clear? And then after a button, you also have this one major and important thing, which is like you can make your button outline, right? So yeah, outline, and let's make it outline danger so that it has like a red color, right? And then you hover on it, you get a red color, right? So this is how you can make your button look very good by just adding two classes, right? I just added these two classes only, right? And your button went from looking a very dull button to a decent looking button. Okay, cool. So that is your button thing, right? And other than that, you can also make your button like you can also use the JavaScript. So right now we haven't really can we use button class on input button. Yeah, you can use it on any. So not input type button. I didn't get like so in the form which we had like in the between. So after the input thing, right? So we can use button class on button tag, and we can also use it on anchor tag, right? So we can also use it as an anchor tag. So let me have an anchor tag. So anchor tag and href, let's have it. Let's not go it anywhere. And yeah, so we have this anchor tag. Let's say right link. Yeah. So this is your anchor tag, right? This is your link thing. So we can also add button class to your link thing. So this link will work exactly as a button, like BTN. So now this link will act as a button, and then I can give it a color also so that it looks good. Yeah. So now this link got converted into a button looking kind of a thing, right? And when I'm clicking on it, I went to this hash thing, right? So that is your how you can convert your link into a button, right? By adding class name of button to your link. Cool. And then you can also make your button look like a link, right? By adding this BTN link thing. So yeah, so now your button went on to looking a button like a link thing, right? Like BTN link, your button now looks like a link. Cool. So these are you can change it into between, right? These are the things which you get offered from Bootstrap. Clear? So apart from this, one more important thing, which so right now we just have used the CSS property, right? We just have used the CSS property. Now let's just focus on let's just see how a little bit of JavaScript also comes into picture from Bootstrap, right? So now what I can do is like I can make this button work as a switch, right? I can make this button work as a switch. So how can I do that? Is this simple, like button, and let me remove this button link first. So what I can do is this. Let's add two properties in here, which is like database, right? Database. Database means like data is your attribute, right? You have many attributes in your normal HTML thing. Then database is just the data bootstrap, so that bootstrap is able to distinguish between them. Then database, and then you have just this toggle property, and you can make it like button, right? You can add it like button, and then you can have like a toggle button situation, right? So when I'm clicking on it, it is staying red color only, right? And when I'm clicking on it again, it is going back to the white color, right? So it is acting as a like a switch kind of a thing, right? Yeah, so that is the such switch situation which we have here. Cool. And this property is automatically parsed into this attribute which is known as area, I think, pressed. Yeah. So if I make it true by default, this button will be automatically like turned on by, yeah, yeah, I think this is pretty much it. Then I think we can have BTN switch also. If I remember, BTN switch. I think that was something else. Never mind. So yeah, I think this is pretty much about the button part. So after button, what component comes into our mind is this card component, right? So this card component is now the next important component. Which one is betting material UI or Bootstrap nowadays? Okay, so that depends really on your preference, right? So Bootstrap is offering you CSS solutions, right? And Material UI is offering you complete components, right? So if you want to like also avoid writing HTML part, right? If you want to avoid it completely, you can use it Material UI, and then now the different question comes into picture that you can use Bootstrap directly into HTML, right? But you can't use Material UI in HTML, right? You have Material UI can be used with React and Brick frameworks kind of situation, right? So Bootstrap is a CSS solution. So if you want to like style something real quick, you use Bootstrap, right? And Bootstrap is very light. It doesn't make your website go slow in any sense. But Material UI offers you complete solution, right? It offers you complete components, so that you don't even have to code this HTML part also. Clear? And if I talk about like what's be in like demand right now, so yeah, Material UI. So if you are coding in React, then yeah, Material UI is what is there right now, right? So now let's discuss about this card property, right? So I think you guys see these card looking things really like often in your any website, right? So suppose you have a e-commerce website, so you have this card kind of a thing where you can show multiple images and you can show multiple things, right? So let's copy the code for here. Let's paste it here so that we can have so that we can have a demo of card. So yeah, so this is a card. Yeah, so we have a card. Okay, let's get our image also so that we can put it. Mm. Yeah, cool. So now we have image also. Yeah, let's decrease the size a little bit. Cool. So now this is a card thing, right? And so now let's if we have to talk about the card component, what all do we have? Firstly, we have to make a div, right, in which we have a class card, right? This width is what we have set autom up, like we have set it on our own. Like we want this card to be of this width only, and then we can have an image at the top of the image, and this card image top like is telling this image to be at the top of the card, right? And then after card, the next important thing in a card is this card body thing, right? This card body is what is giving is this styling thing, right? It is what this is. You are getting this padding and margin kind of a thing using this card body class only. And then you can have card title, which is this card title which you see here. Then you have card text, which is this subtitle thing which you see here. You can also have a card subtitle. So let me have like let's say a h3 tag, and in the h3 tag I can have my card subtitle. Uh, yeah, and then I can have like subtitle thing. Yeah, so you have to like you have to look at the styling like on our own, like what size should be your card title and what side should be your subtitle, right? But you will see that this thing is all getting automatically applied, right? So you have card title, you have card subtitle, you have card text, like whatever text you want to have. Then you can put a button also, right? So this is normal anchor tag, right? But we have converted it into a button using this BTN class, which we discussed right now, that we can convert any link into a button, right? So this is what is happening here. So this is how this is the card component, right? And it is like the most used thing out in your Bootstrap thing, right? This card is very important thing. So you should know and you should definitely have it in mind, right? Clear. So this is the card component from Bootstrap. Now, like Bootstrap offers a lot of things, but what we should like really keep in mind are very small components like this nav bar, right? So this nav bar is also now a very used component in your Bootstrap, right? So suppose let me remove this card component and let me get a nav bar, right? Let me copy this boilerplate only from the Bootstrap website. Now let's see on the website, right? So now I have this nav bar, right? And I can click on it and I can have the drop down thing also. And if I have a bigger screen, it will like take the whole screen, right? So this is your nav bar thing. Wait. So let's quickly understand what classes do we. So there are a lot of classes, right? So there are a lot of classes. So let's break them down piece by piece so that we are able to like understand it. So first of all, we have this. Okay. Uh, so I think we can remove these things, and we can also make this navbar go dark. Like we can have like a dark navbar from here only. Yeah, so this is your dark navbar, and this is just you just have to do like BG dark, right? You just have to add BG dark property in your. So this is like BG body, so you can just add like BG dark in order to make your navbar go dark in your website, right? If you want to implement dark mode, right? So it is that easy, right? If you just BG means background, and then this is the dark property which you can apply. Cool. So this is the navbar thing, and if I have to break it down into pieces, so what this navbar really has. So let me remove the dark thing. Let me have it success only, so that you guys are able to see what's written there. Yeah. So if I let me increase the size, so what do I really have? So this is known as the title, right? This is known as the title, or also I think the name for this is something. Wait. Yeah, so this is known as Navbar brand, right? So this is known as like your logo of the your platform. So the class name is Navbar brand. So this will allow you to get this logo kind of a thing. Then these things are known as nav, like this thing is known as like nav links or nav items, right? Header it is okay. So header is more sort of a placement thing, right? So your whole website is divided into your header, your main body, your footer, right? So then, but navbar is something like from where you want to go. Like suppose you want to be at home, then you want to go somewhere like some other page, right? So that is what navbar is really used for. So navbar full form is what? Navigation bar only, right? So it allows you to go to different web pages and all those kind of things. So the main thing which you have to keep in mind is this, right? The nav bar, nav item, right? Nav item is one class which you have to keep in mind. So whatever items which you have on your class, and then Y container is wrapped by. Okay, so I can remove this also. So your nav bar will apply take the whole screen, right? So I was having this the container thing. So your nav bar was not taking the whole screen, right? So navbar was like in the middle of the thing. So that is what the container was doing. So now if I okay wait, let me put it here. Yeah. So now if I want to have this navbar in the middle of the screen, I so you will see that there in this navbar, this property is also being applied, right? Like nav fluid. So if I remove this, my navbar will be in the middle, right? Yeah. So you will see the navbar is in the middle, but the color is being expanded from left to right. Yeah. Yeah. And like it is adjusting to the size automatically because this is what is coded into it, like so if you are making a website, right? Suppose you want to make a project, right, and you want to have an app bar, so you can directly go to this Bootstrap website, right, and you can just fetch any boilerplate code of an app bar and then you can customize it, right? So how you will customize it? Suppose you don't want these disabled button, right? You don't want the disable thing, you don't want this drop down thing, so you can just quickly go ahead and first of all like remove this list, right? So this is your drop down menu. So you can just whole remove this whole drop down thing only, right? So now you will not see that drop down thing out here on the nav bar, right? That is gone. So now similarly, if I want to remove this disable thing, that I can also remove, right? This is also gone. So this is how you can customize it, right? You can customize it based on your own need. Once you get the main boiler code from the like the Bootstrap website, right? Cool. So this is like all the like the class names which Bootstrap has to offer you. Wait, let me make it down. Yeah. So that was Navbar for you. Other important thing which comes to my mind is the modal part, right? So the modals are also the very used component in our like any of the website. You'll see that many websites having this modal thing, right? So yeah. So let me wait. Let me get that. Okay. So let me remove this nav bar. right? Let me remove this navbar and let me get this modal thing, right? And then I'll explain what this is actually, what is happening. Yeah, so this is your modal thing. And now if I refresh this thing, yeah, so now I have this button, and when I click on it, this modal is coming into picture, right? So now how this is really happening is this thing, right? So what you have to see here is this, right? This button, right? This button, what you have to see is this button, right? And this is having like a normal type. So type is something like, okay, you don't have to worry about the type. Just focus on the class name, right? So btn primary is making this thing like blue and that button kind of a thing. So now how this is opening your modal thing, right? Because we haven't really written any JavaScript, right? So how is this even happening? So these are the property which are making that happen, right? So as I think I discussed that like when I was toggling that button also, right, as a switch. So this database, so data is any attribute which you can define on your own, right? But this database is predefined by Bootstrap, right? BS stands for Bootstrap only. Then toggle, right? So data toggle, you are saying that toggle the modal, right? So this modal is nothing. It's just this modal class name, right? So you are targeting that, target this modal class name, and then you have written that database target, and then you have specified a particular ID, right? Because if I go into this modal div, you will see that there is this ID thing which is written here, right? This is example modal, sorry. And then you have targeted this specific modal only to open when you click on this button, right? So suppose if I remove if I don't write these two things, right? If I just remove these two things, your button will not really work, right? I'm clicking on the button and it's not really working. It's not opening my modal. So these are the two things which is making that happen, right? So this is what gets the JavaScript portion of your Bootstrap really working, okay? And then you can specify any target, right? So suppose I had two modals, right? Suppose I had two modals. Let me make a two modal, and then you can get the idea of the target property also. So I'll make that example two, right? I'll make that as example two. Let me change something here. So this, let me write here like modal two. Let me change the title. So now when I'm clicking on this button, right? When I'm clicking on this button, this is the wait. Yeah. So the target of this button is database target is example like modal, right? Example modal. So this is this modal. When I click on it, this modal is opening, right? But if I change the like hash to hash, using hash, you get the ID of the element, right? So now if I change it to like hash modal example modal two, you the second modal will open, right? So this is the modal two which is opening, right? So this is how you can target. You can make one button target one particular modal only, right? So yeah, so this is just solely done using Bootstrap only, right? I haven't written any JavaScript yet. Cool. And now, okay, now let's discuss one, or I think one or two classes of modal also. So this fade thing which you see, right, in your modal class, what is this doing is like this modal is coming like with a little bit of animation, right? I don't, if you guys can see that this is coming with a little bit of animation. So if I remove this fade animation, that won't go, like it will just appear out of nowhere. Cool. So that is your fade animation which is happening. Yeah, fade. So yeah, fade is the animation part. And then I think the other thing which you have to keep in mind in the modal thing is, yeah, so every modal, so don't worry about these things, right? These things are not important. You don't have to worry about these things, right? The other important thing, every modal should have a modal dialog, right? That is what you see here, right? This whole thing is your modal dialog. Then every modal class should have a modal dialog. Then every modal dialog then has the content, right? Then it has the content, and then inside that content you can have a header and you can have a body, right? So this is your header, right, which you see at the top, right? This is your header, and then this is your whole body thing, right? Which is, and then there is this one footer section. So this is clearly divided into three parts: one header, one body, and then one footer thing. In the footer you have these two buttons, right, to do things, right? And then how to close a modal, you can close it using this attribute, this database dismiss attribute, right? This attribute is given to you by JavaScript only, so sorry, Bootstrap only, right? Because database, whenever you see database, right, in any of the component, just so that will clearly mean that Bootstrap is coming into picture and Bootstrap is using that, right? So now if you have to close that, So this is a button. You just add this database dismiss property, and you pass just the modal property, right? So if I remove this thing from here, right? When I will close, okay, when I'll like click on close, nothing is happening, right? So that is what was making that thing work, right? So this data dismiss modal property is making that close button really close the modal thing. Cool. And then this close, but this cross sign which you see right here, right? This thing is also a button only, but it has this class name. btn close is the class which is making this thing work as a cross button, right? So this is a class name which you will very commonly use in Bootstrap. So btn close is that class name. I think a lot of classes are coming into picture now, right? It's getting a little bit more complex, but yeah. So you will have to see these types of code like multiple times to get like a proper hang of what is really happening, right? So yeah, and so like Bootstrap has bunch of different class, like bunch of different components, right? There are like a lot of components. We can't really discuss it in just 2 hours, right? So yeah, so that like at AccioJob, what we do, like we go in depth of these modules, right? We like go in depth of these and we study each and every component, and then we are able to get very fluent in these kind of a thing, right? Because like in 2 hours you can't really go over every attribute and you can't really learn every class, right? So yeah, so we take around like 1 or 2 weeks proper teaching at AccioJob to get these things out of the picture and to really know and understand what is happening using Bootstrap, right? But I think today like you are getting a decent kind of a exposure to Bootstrap, right? Like what like Bootstrap can do and what is the power of Bootstrap and how you can use your Bootstrap to make your website look good. Clear? So, if that is out of the picture, let's okay. So we have a little bit only time left. So let's end this by discussing some utilities which Bootstrap offers, right? So this is which you will see and which will come into picture very often. So let's quickly discuss about the main utilities, right? So the main utilities of Bootstrap is like you can have colors, right? You can have background colors, then you can have borders, right? I think I showed that in the starting, like that I made that div a border. And then you can have some margin and some padding also as in a utility, right? So that is known as the spacing utility. So yeah, so let's see how that thing works out. So let me have a container, right? Let me have a container. Now inside this container, let me have 2, 3 divs, right? Let me have 2, 3 divs. Let's have one div and uh, okay, let's just put like hello thing in this div, right? And then let's have I think multiple divs like this only. I'll just copy it and paste it again. Cool. So you will have multiple thing getting stacked at top of each other. So now let's talk about the utility thing which I was talking about. So comes into class now. The first utility let's talk about is the border utility, right? Like how you can add a border to a div, right? How can you can add border to anything, any like div span or anything which you want to do. Is this like add just write border, right? Just like border in the class name, and you will have a border, right? This whole thing is having a border now. And then border has 2, 3 things also. Like if you want to increase the thickness of the border, you can do that like by writing border and then by writing some number, right? So it offers like from 0 to 5, I think. So if I write like 4, it will the thickness will grow a little bit, right? So that is your border property, right? So that is your border utility which you have. So I can just copy this border utility and paste it in every div. Border. So now every div will have some border. Yeah. So now every div is having some border, but you see that this hello is like very closely attached to the border thing. So what if I want to give some padding inside it, right? If I want to give some padding in this hello text, so what I just simply have to do in this class only, I can add like p. So p stands for padding only. So if I want to have like padding, like let's say padding of let's say 4. So these 4, 1, 2, 3, 4 which I'm talking about have some predefined value, right? It has some predefined value which is pre-built in your Bootstrap, right? So yeah, so that is your P4 is this padding, If you want some less padding, you can have P2 also. So this will be a little bit of less padding, right? So P4 is definitely greater padding than P4. Clear? So now that was padding utility which you have. Now, if you suppose I want to like have some gap between these things, right? Suppose if we want to have some gap between these divs, what we can have, we can use margin, right? I can give a margin of, let's say, m, and then a margin of like m e. I think, yeah, me means margin end, so that is like margin bottom. So me, let's have it like 3. Okay, sorry, MB is like margin bottom. So MB, let's have like 4. So yeah, so the first div is now separated from the second div because there is a little bit of margin in between, right? So if you want to separate these things, you can use this margin utility from material UI directly. So I'll paste this. So now you have like these half spaces, right? So now if you wanted to do this thing using normal CSS, what you had to do, like you had to write a class, then you had to write the whole margin bottom thing and all those kind of thing, and then specify a size to it. But using Bootstrap, you can just write MB and it has like a margin bottom, right? So you have MB, you have MT, you have M start, you have M end, you have all these kind of margin which are present in Bootstrap, right? So we discuss like margin utility, padding utility, border utility, and then we have color utility also, right? Suppose I want to make this div some color, right? So what I can simply do, I can add like a bg and I can just say dark, right? Let's say dark, so this div will be a dark color, right? Bg stands for background and this is like a dark thing, right? So you can add like success also. Success is green, all those kind of a thing, right? In order to make your background look of decent color. So why we use class div class container? Okay, so a little late for the question, but the thing is this. So we discussed it in the very starting, right? The container is what is the building block of Bootstrap, right? It is what is laying out the structure, right? These divs you see like are coming in between of the screen. So how is that happening? So this container is also is making that thing happen, right? So container is more sort of a wrapper which you should use if you want to do any layout, right? If you want to do any layout kind of a thing. Clear? So yeah, and if you want to use rows and columns, and now you can use these rows and column with these divs also, right? You can use these things also. Suppose I have this row div, and then I have this call div. Clear? And now I can paste this all these things into that row and column thing also, right? So wait, yeah. And let me take this like use it like only 4 of the space. Yeah. So now all these divs are present in a column, right? All of these divs are present in a column which is occupying the fourth, like only the 4 columns of the total 12 columns, right? So I can increase like let's say it like uses like 8 columns. So yeah, this is your which is using your 8 columns, okay? So you can nest these things however you want in order to make your layout which you really want in your website, okay? So yeah, so if you want to use this rows and column thing, you definitely have to use container class, right? Otherwise, it will not really work. So if I remove this container class, this thing will fall out of picture, right? This yeah. So you can see like no styling is being applied, no class, no rows whatsoever. So everything falls out of picture if you don't have a container class, right? So that is why having a container class is important. Yeah. Cool. Yeah. Now, like, yeah, I think that is, I think pretty much. So these are all the utilities which I can think of, like the major utilities which come to my mind. But other than that, you have a lot of utilities, right? You can go and okay. So there is this one utility of display also. So you can make. So suppose I want to hide this element, right? Suppose I want to hide this particular div. What I can just simply write is uh, d none, right? So d none will hide this element, right? So that will simply mean that display as none, right? So that is a display as none, right? So it just hides that display. Or suppose if I want to hide this at a particular breakpoint, right? I can use that also with this, right? Suppose I want to like display large and then I want to hide it, right? Display large none, right? So right now it's in the small screen, so it's visible, right? This hello is visible. But if I like increase the size, like that thing is gone, right? Because My screen size is larger than my large screen. Clear? So as soon as I come to middle, this thing appears, and as soon as I leave my middle screen, come to large screen, it disappears, right? Because the display of that div is becoming none, right? Cool. So that is the display utility, and you can use it with different breakpoints, right? Cool. So okay, so one major good thing which I can show you before we end is the flex on the flex thing, which is very commonly used. Is this okay, the flex. Cool. So I have made a div, and let's put all these divs inside that particular div. Cool. So now we have a particular div, and now this D is D flex means display flex, right? So display flex does what? Puts everything in a single row only, right? So that's why this was in a column thing, and now it's in like a row thing, right? So that is your display property, and you can have it like display as flex, and then you can also have, I think, make it like in terms of row thing. Sorry, columns part. Wait. Let me see how does that really work out. Uh, columns. Hmm. Yeah. So suppose I want these things to come into picture like when my screen is supposed large, right? Let's put it large only. So if my screen is middle, right? So these are in like a column thing, right? Suppose my screen like screen size increases and it goes becomes large. So now these things will come into a single row, right? And as soon as my screen is very small, these things are in like a normal column only, right? So this is how responsive site you can build. Clear? And this is just simply using the display property and adding a breakpoint and just adding this flex, right? So that is your display thing. Cool. So that is your display utility, which is also very commonly used and it is very important to know that this exists. Other than that, all these things are a lot of things are there, but these are the major things which you should be aware about. So I think we have covered the text thing. So color part, so you can apply different colors to text also, right? Text, these are the different text options which you have, right? Text, success, text, all those different colors. Then you have opacity also. You can decrease the opacity also. Yeah, cool. I think so. Yeah, I think that is, I think, all. So now what I'll suggest, right? This after this workshop, what I'll suggest you guys to do is open this doc, right? Open this Bootstrap doc, and if you are interested, if this thing like you guys found this thing a little bit interesting, right? Like how you can apply styling and make your website look good by not actually writing CSS on your own, right? Because you are not writing any CSS, you are just using these class names, right? And this question comes very often that how will you remember all these classes, right? Because there are a lot of classes. So how will you like learn all these class names? So it just if the more you practice, and the best part about Bootstrap is that these class names are very intuitive, right? If you want to have a border, the class name is itself named border only. So the names are very intuitive, and if you keep on practicing, it will be very handy, and you will remember all of these things, right? And when you are getting started with this, what I'll suggest, if you get stuck anywhere, just come to this docs of your this open this get bootstrap .com and come to the doc of the Bootstrap and just search here, right? Whatever property you want from Bootstrap, just search here. Whatever component you want, just search here, and you will get the answer, right? So that is as simple as that. So yeah, so after this session, what I want you guys to do, if you find this interesting, what I want to do. So suppose you have already made a project, right? Suppose you already have a CSS and HTML project. So what I want you guys to do is convert that CSS project, like remove that CSS, and may now make that project again by using Bootstrap, right? I use the Bootstrap to build that project instead of the CSS which you have written, right? Don't use the CSS, use Bootstrap because it will like speed up your development process a lot. Cool. So yeah, I think think that makes sense. So, what all do you guys have any thing which you want to ask, like any doubt, any doubt or any suggestions or anything which you guys want to ask? Because I get like we covered a lot, right? We covered a lot of classes, but most of it must have gone like a little bit above your head, right? Because there was a lot of names which was coming into picture, a lot of thing was there happening. So yeah, so just settle it down, like read about it like on your own, and then this thing will make more sense. Okay. uh yeah, I think so. We covered what we covered is like very basic, more fundamental of the components which are normally getting used in your websites. Okay, I think yeah, I think we are pretty much done with whatever I could have possibly discussed there in the Bootstrap fundamentals. So any doubt you guys have, anything which you wanna ask, anything? Uh, uh, um, mm, mm, mm. Okay, so I think what we can do, if you don't guys don't have any doubt, then so if you are like not really still a student at AccioJob, what you guys can do, like we have a lot of instructors which teach you guys this thing very in depth. So if you want to learn more of these things, more things like this, you can uh, join AccioJob and get to know and learn about these things and like improve your like get your tech career a little bit pushed, right? So I think that is what I have to say. Cool. So I think yeah. So if what you can do if you only use Java. Okay. So if you use just Java, then you can look into JavaFX, right? JavaFX is something which you can use in order to make UI projects using Java. That is something. But just get started with. So yeah. So Bootstrap is what is this is all about the front end part, right? So you have to get into the website development domain. You can't really develop websites using Java, right? So you have to come into this web development domain and have to learn about HTML, CSS, and then you can start developing websites. Uh, I think yeah, I think so. I think yeah, we can pretty much end this session or a workshop if you guys don't have any doubt. So yeah, thank you guys. So I think this was pretty much it. So just go ahead to the Bootstrap website and read about the doc and play with it, play around a little bit in Bootstrap. You will get more hang of what all things Bootstrap has to offer. Other than that, yeah, that's pretty much it. Okay, so